Hello and welcome to Nobody's Listening, the official first episode of our podcast. I'm Echo.
Whisper.
And today we're going to talk a little bit about what it means to be independent and camping.
Kind of our experiences with it and what we're hoping to seek out of developing skills in that area and what we feel and believe on the matter, really.
I would say that there's actually a lot that you could say is really shared between the two, for sure. I mean, we haven't done any crazy long trips like out in like the backcountry, which is actually still on the list.
Backpacking, for sure.
No, I would definitely like to do like a big trip where you hike in maybe like, I don't know, 15, 20 miles. Don't see another person the entire time, stay out there for like a week. The kind of thing where you actually like camp on your way to the destination kind of thing, like it's that far out. I think that'd be a fun
Appalachian
kind of
Trail status where you're going.
Yeah, no, I think Appalachian Trail's a lot longer than 15, 20 miles.
But you can actually pick sections of the trail and just do certain sections. They've got waypoints if you need them. But
there's one up here, part of the Pacific Crest Trail, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
I think it goes all the way to Canada. It's crazy. It's a long one. I don't know. I've always wanted to do a through hike, but that's one of those things you got to set aside some time.
I would say that's probably kind of closer to our peak goal of where we want to be, is the ability to just do a through hike because we want to. We're already seasoned for it. We have some of the knowledge for it.
I've heard some stories though, like some really it's interesting. People hear about like people who do the Appalachian Trail, and I've heard stories of like middle-aged women doing it, middle-aged couples doing it, kind of thing. It takes you longer, and that's one of those things. Like I've never done a through hike. Knowing how to
pace yourself.
Yeah, I was gonna say never having done a through hike myself, but having like watched documentations of other people who have. They all say kind of it's one of those, you do it at your own pace. Like you're gonna have 0 days, zero being like you don't make any motion at all. You just kind of hang out for a day to recover. You know, just kind of pacing that out. Also, it puts you through a lot of towns, so maybe that day when you're going through town, you don't sleep in your tent, you get a hotel.
Right. And I mean, a lot of athletes will talk about it too. Any long distance runners, anybody who does a marathon style race, it genuinely comes down to pacing. I know my experiences have not been long paced camping trips. No. We started with basic tent camping.
The first night it was so cold. Actually, so I think I have a little bit more experience than you do, and I've actually had some slightly rough, like quote unquote rougher trips, but I don't even know how to count those.
I'd say that because you also had more freedom. Mine were usually done in settings, so like school camp trips or family camp trips, and we went from tents, we've done cabins, we've done RV camping, which is its own mess.
I've never slept in an RV.
It's not very comfy, let me tell you that. But you do get to go a lot of places, and because you're driving your tent around, you get to move around a lot quicker. But I think I still prefer the tent camping or the yurt camping, which is like the luxurious form because it does give you a nice base to be at.
Yeah, I don't know. I think one of the quote unquote roughest I've ever done overnight was with a buddy of mine. I had just gone through a pretty rough point in my life, and we went out into the middle of some woods of some logging trails, not like super far. I would say like, I don't know, like 2.5 miles. It wasn't crazy. And I brought my axe with me, and we ended up hacking down a tree, making a fire. We didn't even really make like a lean-to. It was warm enough out, and the fire was good enough. Like we just literally just crashed right there on the forest. It was pretty simple. That was probably the roughest I've ever, like quote roughest I've ever done. But even then, you know, like if stuff got rough, just jump back in the car and drive home. But we didn't. We just crashed and woke up the next morning hungover and nasty and went back home.
I suppose that's kind
of. I think
of
we went to Denny's for breakfast afterwards, which should tell you about how like rough that would really be. Go out for breakfast after.
And we've always really done camping with the ability to get back to a car, get back to some semblance of civilization, so to speak.
Without some skills, it's kind of important. Navigation being key. If you don't know, like if you're following a trail or something, obviously it makes common sense. Like you just don't screw up. But
I was going to say, navigation is one of those big things we've wanted to really work on because you know how to use a map and compass. I roughly know how to use map and compass, but I've not practiced with it, so I wouldn't want to like rely on that skill first trip out.
The craziest thing is I feel like people have been spoiled. I was semi-taught like land nav from a young age. So to me, I feel like maybe it comes a little more simply because I don't think about it as much.
Where I have to think about it almost constantly because it's very unnatural for me. I was raised in cities.
I mean, there was a
city
point,
blocks are what I know.
there was a point in time when I was a teenager, I could tell you the time of day with the sun within an accuracy of like 15 minutes. I'm not trying to like brag or anything, but like you get used to how to navigate with stuff like that. And it's just, it kind of starts to come almost second nature. I don't know. It's one of those, it's not as complicated as it seems. It feels like when you see people do it, it's just like, wow, that's crazy. How do you do that? But once you know once you realize the tools they're using, you're like, oh, come on, it's not that bad. And if you've got a good, accurate like topo map, you're good. You can't screw it up.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think a lot of it does just come down to practice and doing more hikes and challenging yourself to use what you have, and then start branching out a little more.
He's starting to like suck on my shirt again. I don't know if that's going to come through the mic, but if you hear any weird wet noises, it's the kitten.
We have a baby kitten who suckles occasionally, and
you might be able to hear him purring. He's very happy.
But yeah, a lot of what got us on the topic of camping was also tied into freedom, and the freedom we personally find in going camping and kind of escaping and being on our own.
I think the weirdest part is like the freedom for me actually isn't the campsite. It's the next day after you've slept in wherever you aren't at home, waking up the next day and going out. That's when you wake up the next morning and you're not on a time crunch, really. You tend to, I don't know, I feel like we always wake up earlier than we would normally if we were sleeping in at home.
Absolutely.
I think the very first day we went out camping 3 or 4 years ago, we woke up at like 7 and we were like ready to go. And then you get up, you make a fire, and
you adjust to the day, because we also would start to get tired once the sun went down and it was dark again. We would find ourselves automatically slowing down.
The longest one we did, you definitely noticed it. You definitely as soon as before the sun even started to like really go down, like around sunset time, you started to kind of feel it generally. But I think also too, like we were out a lot longer those times too.
We were. Well, that was our last camping trip too, and we were there for what, a week?
I think we were there for 5 days.
5 days. And we did yurt camping, to be fair, but it was also freezing, which made the tents that we had, which are definitely spring summer.
Well, I was gonna say gear. Part of it was it was a new location. Part of it was the time of year. We like to go around fall. We live up in the Pacific Northwest, and I like to mushroom hunt. I really do. It's a lot of fun. If you've never done it, I highly recommend it. I mean, anywhere in the country you can find something. Some parts of the country are better than others for diversity. I know, like Midwest, you're not going to find a whole lot, but I think the irony being most of what you find is edible or deadly poisonous. And once you find like the line in between those two, you're basically set. Up here, we have like a mix of edible, inedible,
psychedelic.
No one really knows. Psychedelic, actually, to the point, once you start to mushroom hunt and you know what you're looking for, I find a lot of the psychotropic ones are actually kind of a nuisance. Like we were going through last year, 2 years ago, and I was finding more psychedelic mushrooms than edible mushrooms to the point where I was like, okay, this is just kind of annoying.
Nature obviously sending a message.
Yeah, right. I want to find something different. Damn it. That was kind of fun though.
Well, and it plays into the whole being able to find and forage what you want to eat, which is kind of a big fun thing for us too.
Without getting too serious into the topic, yeah. I would like to at some point get serious about it. But I think part of independence, in my humble opinion, and freedom in general, is one of those things that we all like to talk about, but I don't think people think about at all. I don't think your average bear stops and ponders what it means to truly be free at all. But independence really is that ability to just, if you live out of a tent, I mean, I'm being hypothetical here, of course, because somebody's going to be like, I see hobos who live out of tents all the time.
Yeah, we do too. Yeah. There's a difference.
I think it's the ability to like just provide for yourself, have the skills to make yourself sustainable is very, very, very important. And I mean, I think I studied survivalism a little bit more than you did, but I never really exercised it properly. Like, I never went out with the bare minimal as far as like Kit was concerned to try and survive for a couple of days.
No, but you absolutely have studied it more than I have. Like, if we put both of us in the forest in the middle of nowhere,
we'd make it at least a week
maybe
before we died of starvation.
But that's kind of the thing, is we would love to be able to, and I think I speak for both of us, have that choice to just go and do it, have the skills ready for us to make the choice to leave and self-sustain, and then if we wanted to come back. But the idea is that we would like to be as self-sustaining as possible.
Actually, I'll take it a step further. I think a personal goal of mine is to be as removed and independent from the system as humanly possible. And if anything, the madness of 2020 has taught, I think, everyone a little bit about the importance of that. Some of those who were affected a lot more negatively, probably more, where they realized exactly how dependent on the system they are all around. And I mean, independence in particular doesn't just come from the means of being able to provide for your own food, your own water, your own shelter, things like that. I think a part of it also, like, especially like in modern day, it comes from also like a monetary means as well.
Yeah.
If you don't have a skill, I feel like that's one of those things that has really been kind of wasted on us. And we push college so hard, but we don't push the means of having a timeless skill. That's why, like, my friends will ask me, like, "Oh, I've been thinking about going to college. I don't know when I go in." I always tell them, go into a trade school.
It's something that comes up for us a lot, because like I went to college, and what I was raised with and taught was find a good job, and I use good in the sense that everyone else does, in the way you earn good money and a good home. And what I ended up finding is a lot of people were very lost in that search. They would get the good job, they would get the good education, but they weren't happy because it wasn't.
Hell, I know adults.
It wasn't actually healthy or good. It just made money.
I know a lot of like pseudo-successful, and I say pseudo-successful, like they're not making like, millions, but they certainly don't struggle, and they go on regular vacations, and they live in a big old house and all that. Yeah. They have, like a retirement saved up and working on it and all that. And even they still don't, like, they'll run into them at the bar and they'll be like, fuck man, I don't know if this is really what I want to do. And like, that's what, I mean, I'm in that point now. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. But I think a part of it for me comes down, and this is a personal thing, I don't think that I really feel like I fit this system. I feel like our culture in particular is very skewed. We've been bred probably since, I would wager, the late 70s or so, to be kind of like more consumer oriented and not future oriented. And I think that kind of bothers me.
Very much a focus on the present for this day and culture of
just selfish. Just generally selfish.
Comfort and convenience, I think, are the two big things for it.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And it's a huge detriment to wanting to set yourself up for success in a fashion, because your main focus is long-lasting comfort and convenience, and you're fighting against pretty much everything to keep hold of that.
Oh, I mean, I remember having a conversation when I was younger with my parents, and they were basically saying something to the effect, or I think it was my mom in particular, so don't mean to sell both my parents out, but my mom in particular, and she was basically saying something to the effect of really enjoying having like a dishwasher and a bed and all this other stuff, like just the general convenience. Like, people, it's weird when the bar where we as a Western developed civilization hold poverty is so much higher. If it was a limbo pole, you wouldn't struggle to get below it, kind of thing. Like, I understand that it's relative, and even me growing up, and me personally as an adult, and other people that I've known in my life, like, yeah, you can hit some really, really, really hard spots, or come from some really hard spots. I don't mean to sell that short at all. More the general term. How many people do you know who are broke, but they're not starving? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no. It's a strange thing.
It really is. I definitely think that our vision in particular as a culture is much different than I think it maybe ought to be. I don't know. That's what I was trying to get to before with the independence. When we think about independence and what it really truly means, I think a lot of people just kind of shy away from the work, because it takes a lot of work.
It does. I know plenty of people actually who I work with who also have their own farm homesteads. And the only reason they work is because the current current state of affairs makes it so that they cannot simply survive on what they have out of this homestead because of the way our culture is oriented. So they are working a full-time job and doing a full-time homesteading, and these people work from god-awful early hours in the morning to pretty late at night to make their family
one of my coworkers
safe.
So I do apartment repair right now, and one of my coworkers, easily one of like the sweetest dudes. He's this big fat, so fucking stereotypical, big fat, super kind Mexican dude. Catch him taking naps in the fucking shop. Like it's actually obnoxious how like stereotypical he is, but he's honestly like the sweetest dude. Him and his wife are really cool. They have a ranch, and they live way out of town. It takes them like an hour to drive into work.
Jeez.
That's without traffic coming in. I can't imagine what it's like when there's traffic going out. And like he'll be showing me these pictures all the time, or he'll talk about his new horses, or like stuff that's going on with the cattle. He's had to leave before. I guess they have some people who hang out when he's not there. I don't know if it's like ranch hands per se or if it's family. I've never asked. Didn't really feel like it was much of my business. And like he's had like little emergencies at home pop up and he'll have to go, but when he's on call, it's the worst. Like he'll actually tell people like, hey, if you've got a flood and you need me to come out there right now, it's going to take me about an hour to get there. By horseback. But I think that's one of those things too. Like he's got a whole side gig going on outside of work that is just for him, and he's living off of it too. Like he's making money off of it, like good money. And I think that's one of those things that other people don't think about. Like when you think about being off of work, and I think, we've been guilty of this pretty fucking well. When you're off of work, it doesn't necessarily mean that you should be done. And I think that we've been kind of conditioned to think that way. I think you should be doing something still kind of productive with your time in a fashion. Not all day, every day kind of thing, I imagine, but
keeping the importance of your time, even though you're off the clock of a job run by whatever business that you're under.
I think, who was it? It was Jocko Willink was saying something about the fact of like an hour not spent is an hour you're never going to get back, or wasted forever, or something to that effect. And I mean, it's some of that stuff just kind of sounds really cliche when you hear it, but I think it's a matter of like how you value it. And I think that's one of those things that I've really been putting some thought into, is just kind of making some importance with your time. I don't know, even like today, like I've been getting pretty fed up with the monotony of my work. And I work alone most of the time, turning over old apartments right now. We're going through a big dry spell in our area. I think a lot of any other shout out to the other apartment maintenance workers. In early December of 2020, I'm sure you probably feel it.
Yeah.
A mass exodus if you live in a big city. And I mean, I listen to a lot of podcasts while I'm doing my stuff, and I've been starting to think to myself, like, all I'm doing this whole time is kind of like accruing knowledge. How do I start to turn that into something on my off time? Like, put that knowledge to use, because otherwise it just becomes this like quiet opinion that I hold the entire time.
Mm-hmm. And that's something I think neither one of us really wants to end up, is armchair knowledge holders, where we have knowledge but we don't do anything with it. It's just something that we collect or consume, because that's really the basis of what we're trying to get away from, is just constant consumption of something.
That's too spicy, man. That's too close to home.
It's just we want to turn it into something useful, something practical, something both for us as well as for our community in a fashion. But
I think the biggest thing is, my dad said it kind of best, and it's weird because as much as I agree with it, I've never been able to really actualize it. It doesn't matter what you do something. And I don't know, if I had a message to kind of like get out to like either a younger me or anyone who's kind of like on that fence of feeling the same thing, they've got like a weird, not a fire under their ass, but like a weird ember just making them uncomfortable. Find something and keep committing time to it. And what's crazy is you're either going to get very good at it and successful, or you're going to learn that's not for you, either through failure and not being good at it or ever getting better at it. And so that's one way you're going to find out. Or you're going to burn out on it and go, fuck this. This is not worth my time anymore.
Yeah.
And I think it's just the key is doing something. Because inevitably, the more you do it, the more you're going to fail. Fail's going to happen. But it's...
pushing through that.
Yeah. It's like any skill. It's like if you've ever played an instrument. You don't start knowing how to play that song that you know how to play pretty well. You start sounding like somebody strangling a cat.
Essentially.
And then you eventually start to figure it out. And that's like anything else, especially with kind of trying to make like a weird, I don't know, career for yourself, like a self-made career. You have to fail forward and you have to stick to it. And there's some discipline in that.
I think that's also a skill that's kind of been...
It's definitely not cultured.
No, it's...
in us.
There's always tools, resources you can rely on to help pull you out, and there's not enough importance on. Some of that is just you doing it yourself, getting the gumption and drive and motivation to go, I'm not done here. I've got further to go, and I'm going to get there. I'm going to push until I get there.
Man, I can give you a really great example, and it's wild. And in a fashion, I think like it's a good thing, and it's also like a weirdly damaging thing. Water. If you ever go through like a survival course or anything like that, water is the first thing that they tell you is the top of your tier list of things to establish getting a hold of, or making sure you can get like a good, steady supply of it in some fashion. You'll starve way later before you die of dehydration or exposure. You won't, if you're in like a developed country, you would have to struggle to run out of water. You can go to any restaurant and ask for it and you'll get it for free typically. You can go to any convenience store and get it for free typically, or if you're really crazy and kind of, wily, ask to use the bathroom and then use the tap from the sink, because the water that comes out of your sink is potable unless you live in Flint, Michigan.
Poor people.
I heard they're supposed to be getting that fixed soon though.
I hope so. That is kind of one of those just...
I can't believe it's gone on for so long. It's such a... I don't understand that shit.
I don't know. That's just, it's depressing. It really is to think that.
It goes to show that, like, I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty anti-authoritarian, if it hasn't been evident by now. But man, it just goes to show that a giant bloated government ain't gonna save you, and that's part of why you need to be independent.
Yeah. Well, and especially in 2020, we've only proven how little it's done for us.
Here's your $1,200 check once at the beginning of the year.
Now survive the next 12 months on that 1,200 while we effectively take away everything you normally know how to use to keep yourself going.
Shut down the business that you were working for or the business that you had. Kind of, yeah, it's bananas. But hot takes.
Yeah. But yeah, no, a lot of our focus, we actually, because of 2020, did not get to go camping this year. It was all a big bummer for us. It was pretty depressing and put us in a low point for a little bit too.
Well, I think what made it so shitty was instead of going camping, we had the time already dedicated to being off, and we stayed home. And we started kind of toying with the idea, like, where could we go out? Oh, you can't. Where would you go? And it traps you in this box where you can't go out and do anything you want to do for yourself. You can't go socialize and meet strangers. And I think one of the freakiest things that we've noted, we bitched about it a whole lot more earlier on, but we've kind of, I guess, just adapted weirdly, but it still bothers me. I know it still bothers you.
Yeah, no, definitely.
People don't talk.
No, that's actually one of the biggest things that has bothered me is nobody wants to talk to each other anymore. Nobody wants to even offer basic courtesies acknowledging somebody else's existence.
Silence. I've noticed a very strange, weird language of silence now.
Isolated silence. Isolating you. Like, don't interact with me. I want nothing to do with you, even though you're another human, another person in my community I'm supposed to interact with.
And to appeal to somebody who's probably very paranoid, because I'm not trying to necessarily sell you out 100%. I can respect where you're coming from if you're... I'm going to be forthright in saying I don't think the whole thing is that big of a deal. Doesn't mean I'm going to be a douchebag about it. If you're really worried, and I do happen to encounter you in public, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to like come up, give you a hug, shake your hand, give you a nice big old smooch and spit in your mouth. But it doesn't mean that we can't have a conversation from, a couple arms lengths away.
Yeah.
you don't have to remain a stranger because you're worried about something.
You have to know how to deal with it, how to adapt.
Exactly. It's the weirdest thing. It's made us worse. And I think one of the things that really bothers me the most about it as well is the way that it's all been, with every other small business being closed down. Excuse me. With every other small business being closed down and the hours being limited, I've noticed that it's actually concentrated people into these locations more. And sometimes we go through stages where it's a limited number of people in the building, but it always keeps changing. Mm-hmm. And no matter what restrictions happen, it doesn't seem to be making a difference. And what's bothering me the most, coming back to the independence thing, what bothers me the most about everything, and I feel like anybody worth their salt as an American should be able to stand by this, it's removing your agency and your ability to choose for yourself. And I know I can already hear the arguments, but you have to give some of that up. No, you don't. You don't. Because I wouldn't take that from you, even if you were the most vulnerable. And here's the other thing. For those elderly people and the sick and dying, if they're already sick and dying, you should be able to go visit them. If they get sick and die, they were already doomed to begin with, and now they can't even spend those last, few months, maybe at this point a year almost, with their family.
I've heard one too many stories of people who are so afraid of potentially getting their family sick that they have refused to visit, refused to do anything other than like talk over a phone. And I know, having spoken with my family, because I'm not close with them, I am across the country from them, they're feeling it very much. There is a depression about it for people who are family oriented, who are community oriented. That isolation is not healthy. It is not mentally healthy, and I think it makes you more at risk.
Let's be frank. If it wasn't something that was a pandemic oriented type of thing, right? If this was something different that you could see people, for example, like if it was violent people preventing you from doing something, everyone would be willing to take the risk because they'd be saying, I'm not going to let these people stop me. Why are we letting this have a different effect on us? If family, community, and a future aren't things worth living for, like taking the risk for, why does this all of a sudden have a difference? It's the fear. Everyone's just afraid.
Yeah.
And it's
taking advantage of that fear.
I do feel like there's a major factor of that, but I do feel like that at a certain point it almost starts to become divisive.
It turns it into, in a fashion, a mob rule of...
It does. I think it becomes so very political and bipartisan, and I can't stand it. Because the worst part is we're talking about things... After a while, we start generalizing and talking about how we would dictate a society should be run, and I can't stand that. When realistically, the conversation I really want to have is about myself.
Yeah.
Well, no, that sounds really egotistical.
That probably does, but...
I probably should phrase that better. I think realistically, all I'm trying to say is that I want the ability to have control over myself. And I feel like everyone should have that particular voice instead of this constant weaponization of responsibility. If you're vulnerable, you're, at risk, scared, whatever, I shouldn't be forced to change my lifestyle. Prime example, I like motorcycles. I like riding them. But other people who are afraid of motorcycles or know people who have, been killed on them shouldn't prevent me from getting one and riding one. If you don't want to get on one, don't get on one.
If it's a risk you're willing to accept and take, you own that.
Exactly.
That is your responsibility to keep yourself safe.
Exactly.
It's like not allowing someone to ride a bicycle because they don't want to wear a helmet. That's not right.
Mm-hmm.
You should be able to choose whether or not you want to wear a helmet. Like when you're riding a bicycle, it's not determinate on you being able to ride a bicycle.
Right. I think actually I can, in a weird way, I think I can kind of attribute this to something that I've noticed as I've been getting older. Being in different parts of the country most of my life, I've moved around a lot. I've noticed, and especially when you go to more rural areas, what I've come to notice is we've traded common sense and morals for law, if it's legal or illegal. And
a simplification of it.
I can't stand that either, because what the law says isn't always correct, in my humble opinion, either.
A lot of times people use it in a fashion as a way to remove their ability to think or their responsibility to think. And I think that's dangerous.
Oh, I agree.
I think it's dangerous.
Yes, what you said, I think you couldn't have said it any better. Or I couldn't have said it any better myself. It's removing that responsibility of making the choice. They go, oh, it's simply illegal. And obviously, here's the thing. Criminals go on crime. They don't care if it's illegal. That's why people break the law all the damn time.
Laws don't stop.
It's not a moral standard. It's the moral standard stops at the golden rule. Treat others how you want to be treated.
Mm-hmm.
And leave the rest of them alone. If you can't make that decision to make a good decision, leave them alone. Some dead air right there.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I don't know. It's a very passionate topic. I think it's been getting at everybody. I think we're speaking to a very specific crowd. So if you don't agree with that particular message, I apologize. You're allowed to not agree. I'm not trying to change your mind. I'd like to, and you're welcome to, try and change my mind, because perhaps I'm uneducated. Perhaps there's things that I don't know or haven't considered.
Open discourse provides a better.
Yeah, I think one of the things that bothers me the most is this weird tribalization of everything, with the politicization of everything. And I think that inability to have a communication. Because, it's people say what I just said all the time, but I don't think a lot of people live it.
I don't think they do either. But.
And I think, by the way, if you're gonna be a voice of dissent to my opinion, respect is key. Because I didn't at once insult anybody with how I provided my opinion. And I think that's key as well. I didn't say, these morons.
Everyone is entitled to their own opinion, and I think if you do have a dissenting opinion, it's important that we get to hear it and that we get to engage with it.
Oh, I agree.
In that respectful manner, because there's always the opportunity to learn more and grow more from it. And this is not necessarily grow more in my own opinion in the direction I was going. It may open me up to a different option or opportunity, or even a different idea that I want to explore.
At the very least, even if you disagree, it builds empathy.
It does. It really does. It builds an understanding.
Yeah.
And that understanding creates stronger communication, a stronger connection.
Well, because no matter what happens in your life, you're going to have people with dissenting opinions.
You have to learn to live with them.
Yeah. No, disagreement. It's one of the beautiful benefits of this country is we can live in the same space with people we don't even agree with,
who are complete opposites of us, and they have the same exact rights as we do.
I think the problem that we've gotten to is everyone kind of feels, I think we all have, what I've noticed, and this could be grasping at straws here. I feel like because we don't have anything to really show for ourselves, because we aren't very independent, we're very codependent on the system, everyone has a very small ego. And as a result, it's become this effect of when you don't agree with me, it's almost like an insult. It's a slight.
It's an attack.
Yeah.
It's worse.
It becomes, that's why we've become so tribalized. And if you say something that's I don't agree with, it's not that I can't disagree with you respectfully. It's you are wrong and it's dangerous. And I think that's that's dangerous thinking.
It forces everybody into their own little echo chambers and isolation again. And isolation is the destruction of your community. It's the destruction of forward thinking.
Yes.
Which is funny because we did start out talking about camping and wanting to be independent, and I do want to clarify, we don't necessarily want to isolate ourselves hermetically.
Not at all. No, in fact, ironically, I think the key to being properly independent, you can go be a crazy old man in the woods with a shotgun, get off my lawn kind of guy. You can be, for sure. And if that's what you want, then, be my guest. No one's going to mess with you.
Yeah.
And no one's going to want to be around that. But that's the key. You got to understand. But that's the thing is, in this day and age, especially with social media, it's so easy to find a bubble where you just always hear what you want to hear.
It's a bubble of comfort.
Exactly. And if you can't tolerate a dissenting opinion at all, you're not really living up to your fullest potential because you're not exercising yourself. You're atrophying your reason.
It makes you weak.
I mean, I would say that it's probably, I wouldn't have put it that brutal, but that's ultimately what I would probably say. And at least in my current point of view, it does. It makes you very weak. It makes you very weak-minded. And the worst part is it makes you angry when you are challenged, because instead of accepting that as maybe even just accepting a difference, we can agree to disagree. You know, that age-old phrase. It's, you're now my enemy.
Yeah.
And you're gonna, fight about it? Because I like cheeseburgers and you're vegan? Like, well, fucking get out of here, bro. That's a little extreme.
I'm not shoving a cheeseburger down your throat.
Yeah.
Either. Like,
I mean, I just offered to buy you lunch. I mean, obviously, I'm just kind of like fucking around. But I mean, like, that's where it's gotten down to, is it's like I've got a buddy, he, like, I mean, it was, you know, he's obviously memeing it up a little bit, but I told him, I was like, I don't like Star Wars. And he was like, you gotta be kidding me. It was a personal slight. And I'm like, I just don't. It's not my cup of tea.
And he was definitely hamming it.
Oh, 100%.
Because we were totally playing together game and didn't mind. But it is something that you see not just on pop culture, but in your day-to-day life and how people go about things.
And I think the funniest part is, like, it's actually become like an in-joke. Like, that's like his personal insult to me now. Like, he'll be like, and this motherfucker doesn't even like Star Wars, dude. Can you believe it? But, like, we still get along just fine. Like, we both just kind of understand. Like, okay. Because I'm not going to...
It's not meant to harm you.
Exactly.
It's not meant to...
Because I don't like Star Wars, I'm going to be like, you like Star Wars? Gross. You know, like, I understand that I'm also in the minority, too. So, like, I'm willing... I come in there willing to kind of, like, catch some crap over it. Because I'm the little splinter in the ass there, like... This guy doesn't what?
This guy doesn't like pop culture?
What else is wrong with him?
What rock did he grow up
yeah,
on?
right? What rock did he grow under, bro? Like, it's just, I don't know. Man. I think it's one of those things. We gotta figure out a way. People always say, why can't we get along? Because you won't let people be themselves.
Be friends?
I think there's a difference, though. And I think the weirdest part is whenever we see something that we view as a challenge, we feel it is damaging. That's why we're not willing to tolerate. And I think that's the problem. We feel like it's going to be this undermining of society. And I don't know how to really properly combat that. Actually, I take that back. I'm misspeaking. I do. You have to pick someone's brain, and you have to do it on an individual level. You don't do it on an open forum where you have to pick apart everyone's opinion at once. You do it one-on-one.
Personally.
You have to start with one person in particular and say, why do you think this way? And then they'll tell you X, Y, Z. And then you get to ask them questions about those elements. Provide perhaps your opinion as to why you think those elements are incorrect. If you want to, educating being obviously a very tentative phrase, because your idea of your opinion might feel like education to you, but other people might not feel so.
Yeah.
So be ready for some fucking resistance. The hardest part is as you get older, you can't break away from your, like, personal MO. I think there was a study that I read a while ago where people were saying, I'm sorry, I'm getting soapboxy. There was a study that I was reading a little while ago that changing the way that you think about something, like your opinion about something, changes something about you on an instinctual level, and that's why you feel like it's a threat. It's rewiring your brain, and your brain kind of reacts to that as being a threat, like, okay, this isn't correct.
It's learning how to break through that. And I do want to say, we're not saying you have to tolerate somebody else's opinions, beliefs, and actions if they are actually detrimental. You don't have to excuse a different opinion if it's harmful. You can still separate yourself from that and disagree. We're not saying you have to adapt to that particular thing. If it's not good for you or good for the people around you, we're not saying you need to go challenge those people and then adapt whatever you're learning from them. You can very much go, that's not good. This is why I don't think that. This is where I'm coming from with it. But you also have to learn that you can't make those choices for them either. You can only make those choices for yourself.
I'm going to use kind of like a hazy example because you could take this the opposite extreme as well. If y'all ever watch little kids argue, how they get over it too, like if they come to a conclusion, that's probably the best example I can kind of come up with. It's very simple. They tend to come to their own conclusion by one means or another. Sometimes it's kind of insane because kids are kids. But they break it down to the simplest point because for them, the results are simple. This is my point of view. This is your point of view. Okay, boom, move on. Because at the end of the day, they both kind of want the same thing. They just want to get on with it.
Yeah.
They're not worried about the big picture. And obviously, I'm oversimplifying because there are some things that you do need to worry about that for. And as adults, that's kind of our responsibility.
I think we've overcomplicated it, though, to the point of not even being able to see the big picture. We're so focused on semantics and the little things. We're not doing due justice to our responsibility overall as adults.
I'll take it a step to the side and say I think it's worse because you're constantly inundated. You never have a break. Social media and this constant ability of being plugged in or constantly being aware of it, you never get a break. You're always aware of the world's woes. And somehow you have to have a solution for it all, at least in your head. You have to figure out the right side of that problem all the time. And that is not a position any one human should ever be in. You're not equipped for it.
As one person, you can't make all of those changes and all those calls. And this is not to say you shouldn't explore these ideas and find out where you stand on it and what you do or don't believe on it. And it's not saying you can't take action on something you feel very strongly about or for once you've found that. Mm-hmm. You can't try and tackle all the world's problems as one person and expect to come out totally well adjusted and okay at the end of the day when
absolutely
you don't actually have the power all the time to
you don't
make
even have
those
the
changes.
knowledge. If most of your opinion is coming from an emotional reaction, that's not an educated opinion. And if your education is a small handful of articles, that's not very well educated.
No, and
that's a little bit of study.
And I think that's where you do need to reach out to others who have studied, who have learned, and start getting more opinions. Get yourself in there, yeah.
Get some experience.
Figure out what it is.
I don't know. It's a very interesting generalization. Kind of taking that back a little bit to homesteading, ironically.
Yeah.
And I say ironically because it's a conversation that she and I have had quite a bit, and the biggest hurdle is the experience. We are very inexperienced at having any sort of such lifestyle, but it's a goal. And it's one of those things that I feel like the experience of kind of growing up in any sort of, I guess, vaguely, I don't want to say hand to mouth per se, because I feel like I'm using that incorrectly, but more like farm style or homestead style, those skills, those applicable elements.
The reaping what you sow.
Yeah. The self-reliance. Most of my life has been spent in cities. A very, very, very small minority of it was spent very far away from a city with a very small population. But even then, I had a job, a car that I drove to the job, and I cashed a paycheck.
Yeah.
And then I went to the grocery store for my food. So it wasn't much different. It was different in a feel, but not in an exercise.
I would say in a fashion, food is what really, for me, kickstarted a want of that self-reliance, that agency, is when you go to get food from a store, mm-hmm. There is, if you want to actually know where it's sourced from, what you're getting, what you're paying for, there is a lot of research, and it's not made easy for you. It is made to be as difficult as possible. You were supposed to just accept labeling, packaging, advertising. Mm-hmm. You're not supposed to really know where it's coming from. And it's a hot topic because obviously you can spend more time investing in sourcing where your food comes from. And we've made an effort to try.
You could be the kind of nerd that only buys all their produce from farmers markets and
supports local businesses or local farms.
Which, by the way, I still actually, even if you're going to be that kind of style, I definitely support that, by the way. I'm not trying to knock that.
Yeah, no, they need it. They need it more than ever right now. But we had a hell of a time trying to figure out just the hot topic of healthy. We wanted to eat healthier. It was a very vague goal. We wanted to cook more, eat healthier, and once we went down that road, it became very much a shit show almost of what is healthy, what ingredients aren't good for you, where are these ingredients coming from, how are these things processed, and
well, after a while, you just kind of have like a weird gold list of things you don't touch.
yeah, that's pretty much what it came down to, was these are things we will not consume.
Like, it's weird. I think the weirdest part is breaking yourself of even almost like a habit. Like, when we first moved here,
Oh god.
if you had asked me when we moved here if I would give up soda with no particular reason, just saying it's healthier if you do, I would have laughed in your face.
Well, and to be fair, when we first moved out here, I gotta lay it out pretty clean. We survived, I think, the first 3-4 months on like ramen soda
Box
water.
mac and cheese.
Yeah. We were broke. We were pretty broke ass bitches.
True. I mean, we definitely struggle bust the fuck out of that shit, but
And it's not to say we couldn't really afford to do better at
the
that
craziest thing is how actually affordable soda is versus like other similar things that are healthier. But the point that I'm getting at was I loved soda. I probably was putting down, I don't know, 3-4 Cokes a day.
Yes, you were.
You wouldn't believe it looking at me, that's for fucking sure. Tall, scrawny twig boy, but I loved it. It was great. That was like my thing. Now, I probably haven't had a soda in 5-6 years. I can't stand it.
I don't think either one of us could actually finish a soda drink.
I've definitely had like, you know, like we've gone out to the bar and I've had like a rum and Coke chaser, and I don't think that I ever really took it. It's so syrupy and thick tasting.
Yeah, we haven't had it in so long. I think pretty much all we taste now is that sugar and the mixture of soda chemicals, so to speak.
It's weird. You do change the taste for it, and it's not that I want to sit here and brag about how I can taste how unhealthy it is. It's that my palate has actually adjusted for it.
We don't want it.
And that's what is it's hard to get over that hurdle. It's very, very, very hard.
Although I will say, Virgil's root beer.
True
Virgil's
facts, though.
root beer, I will always say yes to a birch beer.
It's pretty darn good.
Just on rare occasions, though, we don't. Typically, we don't do soda, just overall.
Yeah, no, I think I can probably count the number of sodas I've had in the past 5 years on one hand.
Yeah, for both of us.
If any.
Although I suppose I traded that out for energy drinks and my overconsumption of coffee. We'll not talk about that.
I did go through a brief Red Bull period, though. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I liked them. But I mean, like that's the thing. Like I don't know. Like I don't want to dwell too long on food like that. Like the healthy side. I did kind of want to, and we can keep this kind of brief because I think we're running a little bit long. Hunting is something that I've been really kind of getting interested in. The laws behind it are bananas. I understand some of the ideas behind them. It's very interesting how convoluted it's become, and a lot of the interesting movements behind that are spearheaded by people who don't know the first thing about hunting.
Who don't do it?
They certainly have never hunted and passed some laws. And this is coming from somebody who hasn't ever hunted before in their lives, and I've just been studying it because I'm like, okay, this is something I want to get into. I want to really know what I'm getting into. And man, it's crazy. But one of the craziest things that crosses my mind isn't just like the whole, I know where my food's coming from, all of that. I think what I kind of keep running, like the situation that I kind of keep running through my head is the moment before I actually make the kill. Just smack the mic. It's a very acute decision, and I have kind of made it up in my head that it's one of those I've already kind of figured. I've been researching too, like how to make sure that I can process everything, take everything with me.
That's something that's very important to us. If we got into hunting, we would want to use as much of whatever animal.
I think there's a deep respect that you have to have before you do it.
Absolutely.
To not waste it. Like, I want to keep everything from the bones and the hide to make some sort of use out of them. For right now, the only thing I can think of with the bones, and this is only because I haven't looked too much into the bones per se, is kind of like making a stock. Or maybe donating them to a butcher, because I know that they can do things with them. But I don't want anything to go to waste. that's kind of, for me, I feel like that's deeply important. I would never go trophy hunting. I just couldn't fathom it.
No. And that's something we've never been interested in, trophy hunting. And I've had family who hunts.
I'll go so far as to say that I can understand
my family has
somebody doing it out of a curiosity or something that they were very interested in, going through with it, and then maybe kind of coming away with their own opinion. I don't think that I could personally respect somebody who did it regularly. I don't see the need for it. It feels cruel in a weird way.
Hunting for sport is very different than hunting because you need to eat. Or
if you're hunting for sport, I feel like it needs to be fair ground and the animal has a fucking fair chance. Yeah. And it needs to be able to hurt you back. That feels like a proper sport.
But, yeah. I don't know. But yeah, the homesteading. Hunting has really been a big topic for us with the homesteading. Is like, for me, I would very much like to grow our own food as much as I could. I feel like that's super important. Hunting would be another step.
Well, yeah, no, I think without getting crazy political and very opinionated about a lot of the other nuances that come with it, like I can't stand that there are certain areas you can't collect your own water. If this is the first time you're hearing about it, please look into it. It's bananas. And speak to your local like officials.
Why can't you collect water from the freaking sky?
Yeah, no, get rid of that shit.
Yeah.
It doesn't serve anyone. Water is a human fucking right. You shouldn't be punished. And some of the fines are steep.
I was gonna say
like jail time steep for collecting water, rainwater.
The state I moved from, you cannot live off grid. They will punish you for not utilizing the resources that they would make you pay for. And I find that to be absolutely insane. If somebody can self-sustain off the grid and they aren't using those resources, they should not be punished for not using it. It's like your bank punishing you
for not spending money.
Exactly, for just having money sitting in the bank. If you have a bank that does that, get rid of them. They ain't worth it.
For never running your ATM card and always using cash. They're like, excuse me.
Like, that's not... I don't know.
So... That's
not kosher.
I don't know. We touched upon a lot. Didn't go very deep into much of it. I think we definitely need to start figuring out a way we can kind of deep dive.
A little structure.
This was more structured than I think even I was kind of aiming for in a fashion. We blew through a lot of things we wanted to talk about.
Well, and I mean, they're all things we can circle back to. It's a lot of broad, interrelated subjects, but I think we're really curious, like, what other people are thinking and feeling, as well as where we're coming from and what we have found out. What are thoughts on hunting for food and utilizing all of those resources? Homesteading versus this reliance on a system that isn't made for you. It's not made for you as a human being individual.
No, it's not. At least...
We're very strong in the fact that we want our independence and our agency to remain as free as...
And yours too. That's one of those things that I think kind of goes wasted. Too. I think when a lot of people see a lot of the really independent type folk, they really think that they're very selfish. And I think I understand it's easy to feel that way, especially if you strongly disagree with it. Here's the way I view it. I'm personally, I don't know if I'd really say that I really fall under either pro-choice or pro-life. I don't know. But I can understand the argument that a lot of conservatives have where they see it as genuine murder. And the people who see it as pro-choice see it as pro-choice. I see both sides very equally. And the people who disagree with the people who are very independent and see them as being very selfish, I absolutely understand why they see it so strongly from that position, because they see the damage that it's causing to what they're trying to accomplish. And I think the craziest part is the people who are very independent. This is where because again, I am biased on here. What's being wasted is that the people who are very independent want that same independence for you, and they don't care that you have that thought. Not that they don't respect it. They are like, you're welcome to have that thought. We're not trying to get in your way. We're just trying to stop you from stopping us.
When your freedom needs to imprison others, it is not freedom.
It's not freedom.
It's not freedom. And maybe that's kind of a good way to wrap that up. Your personal agency and freedom is not just for you, it's for everyone. Everyone should have that right.
I'm going to end it on a high note. If you've made it this far, congratulations.
Hey.
What's something I want to kind of implement, and I wanted to do it at the beginning, unfortunately, but we're here now. What's something you've done to kind of improve yourself since the last one? And I'm starting with us. I mean, lead by example kind of thing. But I'm going to pass that over to the audience as well. What's something that you've done to improve yourself? For me, I've kind of, on lunches at work, I've definitely started stretching more, which I feel like has slowly been kind of helping me out a little bit. And trying to wake up on time better. Because it's very easy to sleep in.
It doesn't help with the 2 kittens that turn into cuddle bugs the moment
no,
they find
dude.
you awake. Worst things to try and abandon.
This guy right here, he'll actually get under the covers and like start curling against my chest, and I'm just like, okay, maybe another 20 minutes.
It doesn't feel so important right now.
Well, no, I think the worst part is I basically have like an hour of flexibility, so I can sleep and rush out the door, or I can wake up and be properly ready.
I think for me it has to do with drive and not giving in to my absolutely lazier nature of wanting to take a backseat in my own life. It's
damn, that's really deep though.
Really kind of wanting to utilize my time for me, even if it's not necessarily the way I'm used to thinking is good for me. So coming home...
You mean constructively?
Constructively, yes. Yes, but also, I don't want to say healthy because that it has a certain bias implication to that word.
When you're saying using your time more for you, I'm assuming you're not going to...
Using my time more effectively with what I say I want to do with my life. So this is, I clock off, I come home, I don't immediately sink into my computer chair and...
That's something I've been doing too.
Kind of waste my time relaxing, comforting myself, just letting myself not be in work mode.
Off work.
Yeah, like just understanding, no, I'm home now and I want to take care of my home. I want to take care of the things that I say are important to me and not let these outside circumstances drag me down to the point where I'm too lazy to do with my life what I need to do with it. And that's been a fight for me, but I've been doing a lot better with just come home. What do I need to do to take care of my homestead before I take a little bit of time for me? Because it is important to take time for yourself as well.
I wish this was a homestead.
It's very important, though, not to let that time you take for yourself become all-consuming for any time you have that is not dedicated to an outside source.
That beats the hell out of my stretching.
No, it doesn't, because I also haven't been stretching, and I used to do way more of that, so I should probably get back on that train, but...
I don't know.
It's small fights, small little things where not letting somebody else take my agency from me when I need to take control of it myself. And it starts here at my home, with me.
Hell yeah. That's pretty weak, but... There we go. That's much better. Alright. So, yeah, no, for sure. Right now, I'm posting these on YouTube, so there's going to be a comment section. If somehow in the far future this somehow manages to get ported over to something where you can't leave a comment, in spirit, do something to improve yourself. If you have an instrument and you haven't practiced it in a while, pick that shit up. Learn a new chord, like master that thing. Whatever. It doesn't have to be huge. You don't have to go out and become a watchmaker. You know. Although
if you do that,
hit me up.
Yeah,
I'm really into watches. Actually, I'm a nerd about that shit. But like, you don't have to do anything crazy. Just it starts small, and then you work from those steps. You start to build that discipline, and then you actually start to maneuver your goalposts for yourself in a reasonable manner instead of setting these sky high goals that you'll never reach, and then you always feel like you're failing.
Start small. Develop yourself. Develop your skills. Grow. Continue to adapt.
Improvise, adapt, overcome, drink your own urine.
Yeah.
I'm Bear Grylls. This has been the Echoes of Ghosts podcast. Or nobody's listening. My bad. We've been trying to figure out the name. We were gonna call it something different.
I think we'll settle with nobody's listening.
I like nobody's listening.
So, this has been Whisper.
I'm Echo.
And thank you for listening to Nobody's Listening.
Official episode 1. That's a wrap.